figured I'd show briefly I mentioned the high voltage tower. This is the one that I've decided to use. It's a kit from VectorCut. I've covered some other products in the past. It's a 60-foot transmission tower. It's a laser cut kit, and it's thin, and it's a bit of a challenge to get together. I believe Walthers, and I think I've seen some, I don't know if it's Faller or Bush or Vollmer. I think someone else makes a plastic kit, but I know what those kits will look like. They'd be fine, I guess, but I wanted something a little more detailed, perhaps. It looked a little more realistic. So I decided for this. And now I'm paying the price. This is the kit. You get it's real thin laser cut at a board, and you got to cut the pieces out, and then you have to bend them, which isn't hard. It wasn't really difficult at all. I do have a pair of flat nose pliers I used to create a slight bend in it. You have to bend it twice. You bend it about here and then about here, just to give it the shape. And it's not real critical because things do go together once you start. The angles kind of line up and everything once you get it together. They suggest you do it kind of in two pieces. So here's one dried up, ready to go. Another one dried up, ready to go. That's roughly what it'll look like. I realize this probably doesn't show that great here. It's not glued together yet. It's just sitting there because now I got to figure out how I'm going to do it and not get glue all over myself. They recommend super glue, which I did use carefully, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not the kind of like a bull in a china shop sometimes, and you got to glue it in that real tight little edge in there. You're supposed to start out with some of the tabs and then flow some into the joint there. Well, when you're holding it together, there's no way to stop it from getting on your fingers, so I did glue myself to the tower a couple times. Not too bad. Obviously, I extracted my fingers because they're still here working fine. Yay! So I used this super glue. You have to use some type of accelerant. There's no way you could... Well, okay, that's my opinion. I highly recommend the use of an accelerant. Otherwise, you'll be trying to hold this thing, and it's delicate, and it wants to move around for quite a while. So, all right, so this tower is going to come tumbling down. Oh, hey, part of it stands up. Hey, I'm done. So now I'm going to try to glue these together. They have tabs, again, to put the two halves together. And then I got to work on the cross arm pieces, get it painted up. And for this, I probably will use an airbrush. I mean, it's fine enough that, brush painting is definitely not going to work. And I'm not sure spray bombing it would be good either. So this will probably be an airbrush project. That's okay. You use the tool when you have to. All right, just want to show that, and then we'll kind of show it as we get things moved along. Hopefully when I'm done, it looks something like that. And for the insulators, I have some ideas what I'm going to do up there, because I do want to run wires once it's done. Again, I got to be careful, get these on, lay enough in the process so that when you're reaching in there, like I said in one of the comments, I'm not going Godzilla on it, because I know I would. That's the kind of thing you kind of forget's there, and you reach in to do some scenery work or to put a vehicle on the road or something, and before you know it, you've poing, there goes your tower, your wires, and like these things are not all that sturdy. So I think, you look at them cross-eyed, they might fall down. All right, more to come as we work along here. I just want to kind of show what we're doing for the high voltage towers. Well, got us 3 towers here. Got them glued together. They're actually relatively square. Kind of fragile, but getting the 2 parts together, the hardest part was getting, for example, you got to get like the first tab up here, and you're trying to hold the 2 halves together, get a little dot of super glue in there, try to get some accelerant on it with one hand holding it, moving in a hand. It was a challenge, but once you get the first one, it's not going to fall apart. Then I just kind of moved down and got the other tabs on the other side. Then came back and put some a bead on the inside, hit it with some accelerant, and they're together, and they're not too bad out of square. I'm not saying they're perfect, but they're getting there. One thing with the accelerant, you guys that have worked with super glue know this. It's great stuff, but just be careful, because if I spray the accelerant or put a drop and it runs down here, and then I put some super glue on that tab, when I bring it together, it's staying there, which can be a plus and a minus. You just got to be careful. You can use that to your advantage when you're doing certain things with the accelerant, because you can put accelerant on one piece and a dab of super glue on the other, bring them together, and they are together, and they are not moving. So be careful. I mean, I wanted to keep the accelerant where I was doing around the tabs, but on occasion it would kind of run down capillary action, and luckily when I had the next tab in there, it was where I wanted it. But just be careful with that. That accelerant, great stuff, but when you put that with super glue, that joint is done, and you're not going to do anything else with it except break it. All right, let's move on here. And I got to put the top cross arms on and keep moving to hopefully get something like that. All right, got one tower together. It certainly is not perfect, but I wanted. This is the worst tower, and by that I mean this one was a little bit out of square, just slightly. And I could tell that because if you look carefully, these top parts didn't line up right, and they're really kind of bad, to be honest. But I think when it's done, painted on the layout, you're really not going to notice it unless you really, really, really looked hard. So I wanted to get one of them together. Putting these pieces here together was a real treat. Here's one that's I have the rest of the other 6 of them ready for the other 2 towers. But what I did, this is an example of what I did with the accelerator, I guess they call it, and the super glue. On one side I put just a little dab of super glue, on the other side some accelerant, and then very carefully brought them together, boom, and touched them together, and then the one side was done. And man, you better be right, because you don't have any chance to there's no do-over. And then what I could do was clip the ends there, kind of flip it up, put a little bit of another drop of super glue down there in the crotch. He said crotch, but in that little area there, that gets one side done, and then the other side I could very carefully eventually grab it, have it the right way, add super glue, and then boom, you got those together. So that worked out okay once I got how to do it. The top part here, this was a real challenge. It's a piece here, and then a real thin piece that goes across. And you can see it's not quite right. The angles aren't perfect. That's because I was trying something. I kind of set these 2 pieces in, glued them in, and then I figured, well, then I'll kind of be able to pull them up with a little bit of tension on them and get this piece across, because it does fit in there nice. There's a little notch, so it does fit in there. That was okay, but you can see they're not quite straight. So I think what I'll do on the other 2 towers is I'll bend the bottom tabs a little bit more, so they almost sit in there exactly how I want them. Maybe just a little bit this way, so there's a little bit of tension when I pull them up, and then put this piece across. So anyway, this is definitely a kit. It's not for the faint of heart. It's certainly doable, but it is a challenge. This is one of the more difficult things I've done in terms of putting a kit together. It's very, very fragile. It is it needs to be super glued together. It's tough. It's definitely take your time doing something like this. But overall, I think it's a pretty realistic looking tower. And now the next step is to get those 2 done. So to have all that ready to go there. Getting these glued on wasn't too bad. You just kind of set them on there. Then I held them in and put little dabs of super glue. 4 on this side, boom, give it a shot of accelerator. 4 on this side, boom, shot of accelerator. And then just a couple more dabs and then accelerator to hold all together. So it worked okay. So overall, that is one tower ready to go. And since this is the worst one, this will be the bad boy that's farthest away from everybody. So that's okay. Oh, I still love you there, Mr. Tower. All right, let's get these 2 done, and then the next thing we'll do is get them painted. I'm gonna, like I said, use an airbrush, or I might use a Tamiya spray to prime them, and then figure out what color I want to airbrush them with. Because with this lattice, there's just no way to brush paint it. Well, you could, but it'd be definitely. I think this is definitely a case for the airbrush. So I'll have to break that out and get that done, and then we'll see how they look like when they're completed. All right, here they are. They're certainly not perfect, and the very difficult part is up here at the top, doing the shield or ground wire portion. That's going to be in focus or not, but man, that is really tricky, and you can tell, if you can see, that's leaning a little bit to the left. It's not quite right. It's really a challenge to get those on, but again, I figured, all right, this one's leaning a little bit to the right, and the other one that's out on the layout, it's leaning wrong too, but not wrong. It's not perfect, but this is tough. Like I said, these are definitely challenging kits to put together, and I did go. It might not show up, but since I know I'm going to be trying to string wires on all of this, I did go a little bit heavier on the glue around the cross arms, because I'm going to be in there and trying to handle it and, you know, hanging an insulator on a wire. So I wanted to make sure it was as sturdy as possible. I'm really kind of nervous about trying to string the shield wires, ground wires there at the top, but it's got holes there, so maybe I can just run it through it and dab some super glue and hope for the best. So, all right, so these are done. I said they're not perfect. If you look at them close, you will see where those cross arms are off a little bit. And obviously I mentioned the top is off, the ground wire, shield wire assembly. But I think overall, again, once they're on the layout, you're not going to be real close to them. And plus, they're not even painted yet. So, whew, okay, so I'm going to get these painted up and then figure out how I'm going to put them out in the layout, where I'm going to put them out in the layout. I do have one more if I ever wanted to tackle another one, although I don't really think that I want to. And like I said, these were pretty tedious to build. I think they'll look good, but they definitely are something you got to take your time with. So, all right, going to prime them and then probably paint them a light. I looked light pale green. I looked at some prototype photos of the power plant that I'm working at, and kind of around the plant. A lot of theirs are kind of a light, like a light lime green almost. So I'll see what kind of colors I have in the. I got an email in the Model Air line and see what and get them painted up with the airbrush. Okay, more to come when they're complete. All right, so the towers are all primed. Primed them in gray. Actually, they don't look that bad, but I think I do want to paint them a light green color. I got a couple options down there. Not sure what I'm going to go with yet. These are all Model Air, so they airbrush well. I have a duck egg green that looks awful light. Camouflage light green. That's looking pretty good. Even the gunship green. I'm sorry, this is zinc. Green zinc chromate. Close. Gunship green looks a little bit too much like a forest green or something like that. So between these two, I'll just pick one and go with it and be happy. All right, and then what I was trying to think is like, okay, I really do at some point want to run wires through here. And how do I get some kind of insulator hanging off the tower? So I do have some electrical items. These are from Sommerfeldt, which is a German company that does catenary for European, you know, the German and the Swiss and others over there that are electrified. When I was in Germany, I bought some, not so much because I was going to put up catenary, but because it's cool looking insulators and electrical apparatus that you can use for other uses. So I picked some up since I was in Germany, because I'm not sure you can get it here in the States without, you know, order from Germany, which you could do, but anyway. So I found some insulators that look pretty good, and interestingly, they do have a through hole through them. So I was coming up with a couple different concepts here, how to do something. And what I think, I don't know how well this will focus. Hopefully it does. What I came up with, on the top one here, I took a Grant line. Basically, they have a little kit here of some eyelets or, you know, that kind of stuff, different sizes. And that's probably not even going to focus in. But I took one of them, and these are plastic. and I cut the eyelet and basically made a little hook out of it. On the bottom, I put a Detail Associates eyelet, wire eyelet, and an eye bolt. Actually, it's 2206 is the number, eye bolt. I prefer that because it's formed wire. I think it may be a little bit sturdier as opposed to going with plastic. Again, especially since, is this darn thing even attempting to focus? Let's say this may not work all that well. Let me see if I can jostle it a little bit. Again, I apologize. This may not be the best video segment. It just doesn't want to focus. Come on, you. I'll leave it out like that. So that one's plastic, and it does fit through, but you can see it's a little woohoo. But again, I'm going to dab of super glue on it. My concern was I think I can get it in there, but it's plastic. If I go to string whatever I'm going to use for wire, is that going to be strong enough? So the bottom one, I took one of the Detail Associates eye bolts and actually opened it up to make a hook. And then the hook fits in on the top side. And the bottom one, again, has one of the regular, just the eyelet, the eye bolt. And that's a little, that sits in there a little bit better. And that might be a little bit sturdier. Just when you go to work this, I just, have an idea. It's going to be a challenge. And I'm not sure what I'm going to use for line yet. I got to come up with some whiz-bang idea for that. But this might work. And in this I could do now, get all these done. Paint it the final color. Hang these, dab them in with some super glue, and then be ready. And then they should actually sit in the layout till I'm ready to run the wires. Because you got to be very careful when you do that, because Godzilla, he's going to come through there. And if you're trying to clean stuff or vacuum or whatever, man, I can just see making a mess out of it. So just some thoughts. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to tackle that yet. I do have some of the Berkshire Junction Easy line, which I don't think will be visible here, but it does fit through the eyelet, and it does seem to have what I'm most concerned about is, can I get that realistic sag that a power line has? Thread would not work. That would be a pain. The Easy line, it might be okay. And then I grabbed, just again on my workbench, which is a mess, this little light. What about maybe 28, 30 gauge wire? That would be maybe a little bit sturdier than the Easy line. So I'm not sure yet. But I'm going to go ahead and at least get these, final painted, get the insulators hung on it. And this might not be the best way. Normally, they would tend to, so if I can do this, I think you can see that top one jiggling around there like a earring. They would tend to have the insulators come off front and back, and then even a little wire jump around the tower. I'm not going to worry about that. I just don't have the time or the effort. I want to put the effort into it to do that. I want it to look good, but I don't want to spend a lifetime making this happen. So I think that would look acceptable, kind of hanging down the insulator like that. All right. Let's try to get these painted up, and then we'll just get a quick look when they're done painted, how they look on the layout. And then I might have to do some scenic work over there in the field to get them sit properly and flat and level. And then I'm thinking if I'm going to be stringing wire, I probably want them in pretty good. So now I got to figure out how I'm going to mount them. I just don't want them sitting there, because when I'm trying to pull whatever I'm trying to pull through the eyelet, I don't want the tower, rocking back and forth. So I don't know. Still a lot to come up with, but at least we're getting closer. All right, here are the towers. They've been airbrushed. I did use a mixture of that one real light green and then one of the slightly darker ones. And then once that was on, came back with a slightly darker gray, real lightly, just kind of tone things down. And then a real light pass with looks like a burnt umber, darker maroon type color, just to give it some. It looks like a little bit of surface rust. If you get real close, you can't really tell from back here. And I got the insulators super glued in again, and I did make them out of wire. I used the Detail Associates eye bolts down below, super glued in, one up above that was kind of opened up to a hook, so they're in through the cross arms that way, and they're super glued in, so hopefully once I'm on the layout and start to actually run the wires through, they hold up somewhat well, hopefully. So they're done. Again, I'll try to zoom in. I don't know if going to be able to focus so you can kind of see the paint that's on it and a little bit of the, it's kind of a, I don't know, a little bit of surface rust, I guess I'll call it. I don't want it to be rusty because they're not, you know, dilapidated. You're going to fall down towers. Good Lord, that would be a horrible thing. So you can kind of see how they're painted. I got to paint the feet yet a concrete color. Get that done. Ooh, buzz over to this one. I'm not really sure how well it's going to show up. Try to get in on one of those insulators. You're going to see what that looks like. The bottom eyelet's still there to run some type of wire through, and the top one is a little hook, which is slid through the little hole there in the cross arm, and now super glued in. So hopefully they hold up pretty well. So that's them. I got 2 of these done. I have another one, but I'm probably only going to use 2 of them because I realized at the one end I'm going to have to put some 90-degree poles in and actually have an idea for that. I'll show that real quick. And these are pretty much ready to go on the layout. I might put them out there for now. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about the lines just because there's too much other stuff that I'll be working on. But someday I will run lines through them, and I certainly do hope that these little bad boys are going to be sturdy enough. I'm even thinking of maybe doing something, I don't know what, with maybe with like 2 of the feet, maybe very carefully drill a hole and put a finishing nail through it just so I can keep it in the scenery. Because again, when you're going to work these, you know, they're not the most robust structures. I don't know, we'll see. All right, so real quick, let's see what I'm going to do there at the one end. Okay, so the 2 lines are going to come down and like basically make a right-hand turn to go over to the substation. So these are some poles. These are actually right near where I live, and they're doing exactly what I want. The line's coming in, comes off an insulator. The line actually jumps around and comes over onto this line here. So I'm going to have 2 of these. This is for 2 lines coming from different directions, but I'll have a pole here. This pole will be set back with the other line coming behind it and going to the other part of the substation. And I have some pretty good detailed photos to see, you know, how they put the insulators on, how they jump the wires around, how the poles are made up, how the guy wires are put on. And I actually have introducing the pole, and I even have an idea for the little insulators coming off the line. That's again part of the let's see if I can get this somehow so it'll show up. I don't have a real good background for it. But that's a little one of the Sommerfeldt insulators. I put one of the Grant line. That's not going to focus. I put one of the Grant line. Come on, sweetheart. Nope. In the end, which is a little loop. And holding it there is actually some of the thicker music wire you're supposed to use if you're a real model railroader for the tortoise switch machines. And that might work pretty well, again, to kind of put it in, you know, drill a little hole and bring it off the pole. Drill a little hole, bring it off the pole, like they do here. So that shouldn't be all that difficult to make up. So that's going to be the next little thing. I'll make up these poles and probably have them ready as well on the layout. And then just waiting to do some wiring, which will be fun. So at some point in time, we'll get that done. So that's the plan for now. All right, one thing I did, and I highly recommend you do this earlier, is I drilled 2 holes in the bottom feet, and I put in 2 on each tower, 18 by 5/8 wire nails. That way I got something, and I go to mount it to the scenery, can knock a hole and place it in. And I have them now set up to sit here. Anyway, I got to refine the holes. I don't want to mess with it now. But so that'll hold that together. To do that, I took a number 54 drill out of here, and I put it in my Dremel, and extremely carefully laid the tower down, and then drilled the hole up from the bottom and then brought the nail in, super glue under the head, let it drop through the hole, put some accelerator on it, and there we go. So that is done, and I'm just going to lay that down for now, so I can't do this with one hand. So again, I would recommend this would be much easily accomplished. Take the feet, drill the hole, put the nail in before you even glue it all together. That way you're done. You don't have to worry about trying to drill on this fragile tower at the end of the process. But I wanted to get that in there so I have something now to mount to the layout with. So I just thought I'd show that being done. Alright, trying to make this so I can show these poles. It's not that easy. This is what I got so far. I have the poles and I have these little insulators I talked about. They're all in the back, and I don't know how well this will show, if at all, but I went in with some of those other Detail Associates eye bolts and put a bunch of them in for the ground wires, and then for guy wires to hold up the poles. And in fact, that's what I'm thinking of trying to do with the guy wire. Let me see if this will... trying to get it so you can see what I'm doing there. I use the 015 wire. Don't focus, thank you. And I made a little bit of a hook. It's not quite as fine a hook as I had hoped. Well, that wire is a little stronger than I thought. I'll try some other ideas to make a little tighter hook there. And then I'm considering that's a titchy turnbuckle. If you drill it out very carefully, and I apologize, I'm moving around here, you can actually slip the wire right through it, and it kind of looks like, let me zoom back out here, on the prototype guy wires, if this shows up here, you can see how they have that right there. It's actually a small piece that comes off the pole. It actually goes around the little band. I'm not putting a band on my poles. I'm not worried about it. Then it comes down to there. Maybe for some adjustability, to adjust the tension. I'm not sure. But you can certainly see that little piece there. So I can kind of simulate something like that if I decide to go ahead and put that little titchy turnbuckle on there. So we'll see. So that's what I'm planning to do for the guy wires, and then there's really not a whole lot more to these particular poles. Let me just pull that off. You see that slides right on there, so I don't have to mess with two pieces. And then on these, again, I don't know if you'll be able to see, I added the little jumper wires. It's kind of hard to get a decent video of this here. I don't know if that'll show up any better. What I did, I cut some little tiny wire. I had it on the workbench, put a little hook on one side of it, hooked it into the outside of the... Let me see if this will show. Probably not. Dabbed one side with super glue, went over the other side, kind of had a little, made it like a little 90 on it, brought it down through, and then super glued the other side. So that's intending to look like those poles. Close. I mean, I think it's close enough. That one there I painted gray just to kind of, say, hey, something was done was different. So those are the two poles there. And again, these are going to get the 90-degree lines coming down. And so I have little eye bolts for the shield wires there and there to make a 90. Then I got two of them there for guy wires on each pole, this side and the back. Because I seem to have the guy wires, opposite the actual lines. So 4 per pole. So that's what I'm going to try to do there. And I realize this probably doesn't show up all that great. But that is my rendition of those poles. Not too bad. I mean, close enough. Not exact. The things are a little bit bigger than scale, but whatever. And I did not try to model on some of these jumper wires. Yeah, like on this one here. If you see that jumper there, it's actually got, it's got like a connector in it. So it's one piece from the left side, little connector, another piece on the, yeah, right, I'm not doing that. I just made it a solid piece. You know, good enough. And again, I don't know how well all the other stuff this poor camera trying to focus on, it's not going to work, but they're in there. Alright, so that's that. So now I'm pretty much ready with these poles. I'll think about the guy wires. Maybe do a little bit of weather into these, but not a lot. I mean, I think they look relatively close to those poles. And then it's time to get them over and get all this stuff over in the layout. Okay, last thing I'll show, I promise. What I decided to do was I made up all the guy wires. Just put little hooks at the end to clip into the eye bolts. Good enough. It's not exactly like the prototype, but it's close enough. And then looking at the prototype, all the guy wires, if you look at that, the little section from the top down to what I'm using the turnbuckle for is painted, it's white. I mean, it's definitely white. So I said, okay, well, I can handle that. So what I did was I just kind of went in, got some Model Master flat white, and I painted the top section from the turnbuckle. That's the titchy turnbuckle right there. I painted that grimy black, and then just put a little bit of white on the portion up to the hook. It's not perfect, but it kind of gives you the simulation of what's on the prototype. And I realize I'm bouncing around because I'm zoomed in. So that's what we're going to do for the guy wires. And like I said, that's, if you look at the photographs, you can definitely, you might not be able to tell from here, but if you look at that, they're definitely white. Those that section there it is right there, almost right in the center there. It's definitely a white, it's white. So I now have that on this. Now the guy wires will probably go in once I get it over on the layout, and I have long ones and short ones for each. So I think these poles now really are pretty much ready to go. Okay, I'm going to shut up, and I promise I won't show any more. Next time they'll be over on the layout. I hope. Alright, here in the layout. This is not final. I don't have the guy wires right. I just want to kind of get an idea. But these will be the two poles, I said, coming off of the substation, which will be in that brown spot. Then we'll have two phases. One phase will come up to that. One phase will come up to that. Then they'll shoot up that way. And those other two towers are just kind of placed right now. They're not level. They're not really in where they're going to be, but that's the rough idea. So you see the lines come down, make a 90-degree down to the substation. So I think I'll be able to make those guy wires work. They're a little bit too long now, so I got to cut them. But I think it'll look pretty interesting. So let's take a look from the end and see how it looks coming down by the road. Okay, there's that one, and then, like I said, these are definitely not placed exactly where they're going to be yet. But you kind of get an idea how it's going to run down to those poles and then down to the substation. So I'll go ahead and stop this now because I'm not really going to do much more work on the towers or the other poles. Now it's a matter of getting them in, and this one obviously is way out of level, so might have to put some more footings, you know, underneath that one to level it up. Obviously got to clear out some of the ground, or I knew I was going to have to do some of that. Even on the one there in the center. I have to do some work on that one too. Let's do a quick flyby here. And that's where that one will sit. And then it'll move. Eventually down. I said eventually I will string wires. Now that's certainly going to be a treat and a half. Because I have to stand on the stool, reach over, and try to string wires. So I'd like to. We'll see. And then that's how those will be over there. So I think it looks pretty neat. Even there with the guy wires, just kind of not even in seriously. I think it looks kind of cool. All right. And it's really kind of hard to see those poles because they kind of blend into the scenery with the color I used. But anyway, they're there. All right, so there you go. Getting power to the layout.